So it's funny. I'm watching, Peter. I'm watching some of these losing quarterbacks. Deshaun lost. I thought looked good. Goff lost. I thought had promise. Dak lost. My takeaway from the weekend is, we got some franchise quarterbacks here. Deshaun Watson, Goff, Dak, Wentz. I mean, I watched this weekend. From a quarterback standpoint, Peter, the league's pretty healthy, right, with these young guys?
No question about it. I have said that every year, you know what's predictable? Every year, being around people who are passionate about the NFL, in the media, in the league, players themselves, there's something or other every year where the sky is falling.
Yes.
But it's absolutely, totally consistent. Every year, there's a quarterback crisis. Every one. And I can just tell you this, at least in my opinion, every time we look at quarterbacks, we judge them. Brian Billick said a few years ago, and I thought he was absolutely right. This was after the Ponder year and the Jake Locker year and the Blaine Gabbert year. Remember, I think they went 8, 9, 10. So, and Billick said, hey, listen, I'll tell you about quarterbacks. First-round quarterbacks, there's always a 50% dropout rate. Okay, so I've believed that for the longest time. But let me ask you this, Colin. Right now, in the last 3 years of the draft, okay, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. Now, Mariota, I thought before he got hurt, wasn't as good as I thought he would be, but I'll still take him.
Yep.
Winston, I'm a little bit concerned about his accuracy in some of his decisions, but I still would take him.
Yes.
And then last year, Goff and Wentz. Goff looked bad last year, but now that he's getting really good coaching, his talent is really coming out. So there's 2 from last year. Now look at this year.
Yeah.
Mahomes isn't playing. Maybe the way Alex Smith is playing, he'll never play. But I think that if you look at every year, this is just me, okay? I think that they might be getting a little bit better at picking and then coaching quarterbacks, because I agree. When is the last time we've seen a quarterback come in with a lot of people dubious about him? And there were a lot of people dubious about Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
I remember at the scouting combine last year. What a big adjustment he's going to have to make. And I don't really watch much college football, so I didn't know all that much about him. But now you look at him. Guy's got 9 touchdown passes the last 2 games.
Yep.
He's led the Houston Texans to their largest 2-game offensive mark in the history of the franchise, 91 points. I mean, I heard this last night, Colin, from somebody reliable in Houston. And I heard this, that as much as everybody was so down on losing J.J. Watt in the Texans locker room, as much as that happened, there was not this despondent feeling, and Whitney Merciless, by the way, I shouldn't minimize that. There wasn't this despondent feeling because they feel that they have found their long-term quarterback.
I totally agree. And by the way, outside of Derek Carr with Jack Del Rio, most of the young guys have offensive-minded coaches, which I think is a trend. It's a smart trend. I love Lovie Smith, but the Dirk Cutter move I totally got. And outside of Jack Del Rio, owners and GMs are figuring it out. For these kids to flourish, give them an offensive coach, let them bail water. It's better than a defensive. Jeff Fisher McVay thing is ridiculous looking. Now, I want to shift to this. Tom Coughlin leaves the Giants, and he goes to Jacksonville. And he's just making calls, and he's doing what Coughlin does. Suddenly, Jacksonville's got a heartbeat. Simultaneously, the Giants, McAdoo looks more coordinator than head coach. Is it possible here? We've just never given, because he coached in the Belichick era, we never gave Coughlin the respect he deserves. I'm seeing 6 games removed. Jacksonville's a different football team. Coughlin deserves some of that, doesn't he?
Oh, he deserves some credit, but just remember, Colin, and again, look, I like Tom Coughlin a lot. I think he did a really, really good job with the Giants. Obviously, won 2 Super Bowls there, beat Belichick twice, deserves great credit. But he missed the playoffs a lot of years, and he had a quarterback for all those years. So again, I'm not dissing Coughlin. I'm simply saying that I'm not sure he was an underrated coach. I think he was celebrated as a really good coach who could beat Bill Belichick, and he beat him pretty often. So I give him his due. The McAdoo question is a totally different one. Okay, and now I think the real question around the Giants going forward this year, the Giants are not the type of organization that fires people in the middle of a year.
Yeah.
But what the Giants will do is they're going to have to take a long, hard look at this organization at the end of this year. Both Jerry Reese as general manager, Tom Coughlin as coach. And Colin, here's my question for you. I know it seems a little bit precipitous, a little bit early, and they just picked a quarterback in the third round last year, Davis Webb. But what happens if the New York Giants have the third pick in the draft?
Oh, you pick a quarterback.
And what happens if, as Trent Dilfer says, this could be the greatest year for quarterbacks since the Marino Elway year? If that happens, just if that happens, what should the Giants do? You know, with Eli Manning finishing his 14th year, unless you feel absolutely great about Davis Webb, I think if you're the Giants, you got to take one. I mean, are you going to pass on Darnold or Josh Rosen or whoever else, you know, is going to come out and you're going to be in position to take? You either do that or you get a bounty for it and you trade down with somebody. Like, how ironic would it be if the Giants traded down with the Jets? If the Giants are sitting there at number 2, choose not to take a quarterback, and the Jets move up from 15 and they trade 3 ones or something. But I think the Giants are going to have that decision to make.
Yeah, I think quarterbacks are like beachfront property. If it's available and you can afford it, buy it. You may not need another beach house, but if you can afford it, you can buy it. If the price is right, you just go get it and you figure it out later. Peter King's joining us, themondaymorningquarterback.com. All right, so I'm watching the Packers-Cowboys, and it's just – I'm going to get to the Steelers in a second because that's we got all sorts of issues. But I'm watching the Cowboys and I'm watching the Packers, and I know it's overreaction Monday. But my takeaway was if they played 10 times, they'd split it 5. I'm not as doomsday on the Cowboys as everybody else. I really not. I think their schedule's been tough. They've lost a couple of games they could have won. I'm not overreacting here. I don't love their wide receiving core. I still think Dallas and Green Bay are a coin flip, although one...
I agree.
I think they're a coin flip. So you do too.
I totally agree, especially because I really like right now, I like DeMarcus Lawrence on defense. I like the fact that Rod Marinelli, he's one of those coaches, you give him a bunch of ingredients that are pretty good, and he'll whip together a 4-star dinner. He always has done this. And to me, I think Dak Prescott has the, really kind of has the stones, and he really has the ability right now to play well in almost any kind of football game.
Yes.
I think he's a keeper for a long time. And at some point, I think their line plays better. And I think Ezekiel Elliott begins to be the force that, he was last year.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll say. I think it's easy on a day like this to point to the winners and point to the losers and say, you're good, you're not. But there are so many games in the NFL that, quite honestly, come down to one play at the end in 10 inches. Look, the Detroit Lions and the Atlanta Falcons game was decided by Golden Tate being 8 inches away from the goal line when his knee hit the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't look at that game and say, oh boy, Falcons a lot better than Detroit, because they're not. And so I think you're right, Colin. I think we too often demonize Sunday's losers, and basically glorify the winners instead of looking at both of them as pretty much peers.
Yeah, if Cooper Kupp makes a catch, and he almost did, the Rams are first place in that division. It was a really good finish. Finally, Pittsburgh. Big Ben doesn't feel all in. I mean, he's been taking shots at the organization for 2 years. Dave Wannstedt told me Friday, once a guy mentions retirement, he's retired. He's been passive-aggressive sometimes in his comments. I think Mike Tomlin is a little bit too beholden to some of his young stars. I've been critical of Mike. Some of the young stars are immature at times. It's not working. Peter, your sources, what's going on in Pittsburgh? Because it feels like it's getting worse week to week.
Let me just say this, Colin. I think that right now, I think the one thing you have to do is you have to look at this, and you have to look at Ben Roethlisberger, and you have to ask yourself this question, because he has talked about this for a couple of years. Bill Parcells is the first person I ever heard say that, okay? I was covering the Giants maybe in 87 or 88, and he used that exact line. He said, when you start talking about retiring, you're retired. And so I always have respected guys who, when they do start talking about it, they actually retire. And Peyton Manning right now, in my opinion, is the great example for young quarterbacks and old quarterbacks, because he said this to me maybe 5 times in the last few years. He said, I'm not talking about what I'm going to do when I retire. I don't really know. Plus, it's not fair. I want to devote all of my energy to this team right now. But the fact that Roethlisberger has brought it up 3, 4, 5 times now in the last couple of years, I mean, I will not be surprised if he retires at the end of this year and, the Steelers have to go prospecting. And I never thought I would say this, but to me, I think the Steelers are going to be in the market for a quarterback at the end of this year, whether Roethlisberger retires or not. They absolutely have to.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for watching. We want you to subscribe here, to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from the herd, or go watch a few segments from the newest show on FS1, First Things First, with Chris Carter and Nick Wright.